While I'm no expert on camels, my friend, I do know one thing about them, and that is that they do not store water in their humps. They store fat, and a lot of it. A single camel hump can store as much as 80 pounds of fat tissue, and all of those little fat cells are just full of potential energy waiting to be burnt or metabolized, right? So during times of food stress, which is common for camels, they will go weeks at a time without eating, and the way that they survive this semi-starvation periods is to literally metabolize, or colloquially burn, the fat that's in their humps. And in addition to being a source of energy during lean times, camels' humps also act as massive heat absorbers. So the fat cells in the hump absorb a ton of solar radiation and store that as heat. Now what's really cool is that that keeps the rest of the camel's body cooler than it would if it didn't have this massive heat absorber on its back. But get this, it also warms them at night. So desert nights are notoriously cold, just as notoriously hot the desert days are. And the heat from the hump just spreads, dissipates through the camel's body, so it doesn't have to work very hard to keep itself warm when it's cold. So at this point you might be saying, all right, so camels store fat, not water, in their humps, but how do they get through the long periods of time, sometimes a week, 2 weeks, without water? There are very few other animals on Earth that could do that without dying of dehydration. So how do the camels do it? Check this out. And the adaptations are largely in their blood. So camels can lose up to 40% of their body weight. Think about that, 40% of their body weight in water losses when they don't have access to water for long periods of time. 40%. We would be so dead long before we lost 40% of our body weight in water losses. Our blood would be the consistency of jam, and our red blood cells couldn't circulate throughout the body, delivering oxygen and removing carbon dioxide. So we would go into cardiac arrest long before we lost 40% of our body weight. However, check out the difference in the shape of the red blood cells between humans and camels. Camel red blood cells are shaped like ovals, kind of like these little kayaks or canoes. And that shape alone allows them to slide and slip even in thick blood, that is thickened by dehydration. These little ovular red blood cells can still get to where they need to go and do the job they need to do. In other words, camels can tolerate much higher levels of dehydration, in large part because their little ovular red blood cells can slip and slide even through thick blood. And in addition to that, when camels do have access to water, their red blood cells can swell up to 240% their original size with water. Most other mammals' red blood cells can't handle more than about 130 to 150% swelling before they burst. Meaning, when camels drink, their red blood cells are storing a ton of water compared to most other animals, which gives them a source of water long after they've left that water source they just drank from behind.